Hello, guys. This is the Comment Podcast. I'm Brian Olvera with.
I'm Tom Mustaine from Escalation Studios.
So we're here to talk about Eternal Fate. So what exactly is Eternal Fate?
So Eternal Fate is kind of a labor of love project that we've been building on our own, under our own dime, under our own roof for the last year, and we just announced it a couple days ago for Quakecon. We have a live playable demo at Quakecon, and we're going to be doing a closed beta coming up soon. But what it is, Eternal Fate is basically if you take a Diablo and Torchlight style game from a gameplay and perspective view and insert elements from shooters like Call of Duty, Team Fortress 2, Battlefield series. So we're hardcore gamers. This is the kind of game we've wanted to do for a long time, where you can basically run around and do PvP style combat with your friends, and yet still have fun game modes that are kind of similar and akin to stuff you see in shooter type games. So we've kind of mixed the two together. So we have persistent characters, we have persistent towns and persistent gear, kind of like a Team Fortress 2. And as you unlock that gear and those characters unlock all the various pieces, you can select loadouts that you can go and fight multiplayer with.
Which
with
is
your friends.
obviously some of the elements you took from, some of these nice influences from the modern shooters that
Absolutely.
you guys have been doing.
Yeah.
So I've noticed that this is actually a Kickstarter project.
Yep.
So you hopped on the train just like with Tim Schafer and.
Well, Tim's got a little bit more.
Sadly, I was one of the suckers who gave him the 15.
I gave him more than that. I think it'll do well though. Those guys are
definitely
awesome.
So.
Like Kickstarter for us, just interrupt real quick. Kickstarter for us, we've actually put a fair amount of our money into this game already. We've been developing it for about a year and a half with our profits, and the Kickstarter allows us to do a little bit longer period of closed beta time, where we can have people actually join in, contribute to the game, play, and get their hands on it early. And then obviously the bigger it goes, the more platforms it allows us to get to, and other things like that too. So the more we get behind the Kickstarter, the better. Otherwise, it'll just come out. It'll just come out later because it's still under our own steam. So it just takes more time when it's all funded from our slow profits, or slow training profits.
Okay. So exactly, do you have a specific plan for your closed beta structure? Like if the Kickstarter goes well?
Kickstarter, yeah. So we're about a month and a half away from doing a closed beta, and what it's going to be is Kickstarter backers will get access to the closed beta. We'll get access to some forums that we have that are private forums where they can contribute and talk about the gameplay. But anybody can get in and play the game and provide feedback. And basically, kind of what you anticipate with what happened with Counter-Strikes or even Minecraft. It's really more open to people to come and play. It's not a free-to-play game. We're actually going to be like a $10 or $15 one-time purchase. We're not going to try and nickel and dime people. We'd rather put the game out and just let people enjoy it. But for the closed beta folks, you really are contributing, to the product. We really need to, because it's PvP. You got to get it balanced right. And the only way to do that is we got to get a lot of people to come and play. So.
I noticed on your slasher you had a very nice stylized art for the characters and the models that the players will be able to control and do some of the combat. It's a very interesting art style. What was like your main influence on some of these elements?
It's interesting. So we took our influences from honestly some of the old school kind of classic console RPGs. So we initially looked at things like A Link to the Past on SNES, Zelda: A Link to the Past, or Secret of Mana, and said, what if we took that art style and brought it into the modern age? Not weify it like kind of what Nintendo's done, but brought it a little bit more up to the modern age. So we have our towns and our saturation and the way the game looks kind of from a colors perspective is a little bit more like we'd expect out of the old classic kind of console RPGs, and we've brought it more into today and intermixed elements from like kind of Pixar Stretch and Squish style animation for the characters that run around the world. So we think it's a bright, colorful, fun kind of game. Has a lot of cool special effects, but it's got these influences from the old school roots, right?
It does seem pretty interesting. Would you mind talking about some of the technical aspects of the game, like maybe like? It seems very interesting. Like some aspiring developers kind of always want to know, like, oh wow, what engine are they?
Sure.
Like,
Well, so we're actually, because we're a small shop, we've built our own engines before. We actually did, we've done some stuff on iPhone. We did the Doom Resurrection game with its software on iOS. We also did Midway Arcade on iOS. So we've had familiarity with building our own engines. But this one we actually use Unity. We do kind of off the shelf.
I'm a little bit familiar with Unity. It has some interesting.
Unity has really come a long way, and I'm an old school dude. I've been using everything from Quake 1 all the way up to Unreal 3. I've worked in every engine out there, and while those engines are all it's very cool. They're very specific. I've spent a lot of time and money in those engines over the years. Unity's really interesting from a professional developer perspective as well, because it has a lot of the features you'd expect out of one of the really high-end engines, but they also have a lot of cool cross-platform capabilities, and our artists really enjoy it too. So it's Unity on the front end for the client, but we've also built our own completely custom backend. So all the character persistent stuff is run on our own servers that lives in the Amazon cloud and co-load servers, and basically all that stuff that we've custom built. So really the cool part is if we're using Unity as the client, the backend that we've built, we could actually take Unity out and plug in Unreal one day. And we've worked in Unreal, we can take that out and plug in whatever we want, because the backend is kind of platform agnostic. So we kind of built it, all of our team comes from more traditional AAA shooter development. Like a lot of our guys have contributed to Doom, Quake, Halo, Borderlands, Medal of Honor, Call of Duty, World of Warcraft. Our team is a lot of veterans, and so we've applied kind of the veteran game development principles to this game. And so it affords us to do some cool thinking ahead of time that lets us do a bunch of cooler stuff on the back end. So that's what we built the way we did.
So as we talk about loadouts and some of the other features, are you guys willing to be offering some really in-depth customization for their loadouts and their characters? Like, how is customization working for Eternals?
Customization is a pretty big part of the game, as far as it lets you. Now I'll back up just a little bit on that, because one of the things that's really key about Eternal Fate that we wanted to build is traditional, like I won't say MMOs, but traditional multiplayer games where you have a leveling curve. MMOs are a good example, like World of Warcraft are great examples. One of the things that frustrated us as developers and players, you play Warcraft, and what happens in arenas, battlegrounds, is your friend plays for an hour or two more, and they out-level you, you can't play with them anymore. They actually move to a totally different tier. So what we've done is something a little different. Our leveling curves are more akin to what you see in a shooter like Call of Duty or Team Fortress. It's actually flat. So you get unlocks and gear and details from playing the game that you can apply to your character and skills and loadouts. But at the same time, the damage curves are actually flat. So you can always play with everybody. Even like a level 80 player who has all this cool stuff and gear, they can make changes to their moment-to-moment mechanics with each other. But in general, they're able to play with everyone at all times. So a level 80 player is going to have all the cool gear and all the details, kind of like a Call of Duty or Battlefield does when you unlock all the attachments for weapons and all the kind of details there. It's very similar. But we have, you can customize every aspect of your character's paper doll. We have 3 different character classes. We have multiple races. We have a whole lot of customization for head and face. We're not doing like cheekbones and all the crazy, but you can get in there and do a lot of detail. And people have a lot that they can customize for their characters. So yeah, it's a pretty big part of the game. And then the loadouts you asked about specifically, kind of like probably the best 2 examples like is a Battlefield or a Call of Duty, and even Team Fortress actually do it now with loadouts. You're specifying loadouts that kind of give you a slightly different play style for each of your characters, each of your character classes. So you can build a loadout that's more stealth oriented for running objectives. You can build one that's more defense or crowd control oriented for protecting something, or you can just be a total tank that tears it up. And so your loadouts are very much the rock, paper, scissors to other people's loadouts. So even if this player is level 80 and they have like a perfect set that has about an 8 to 10% difference from you, you could be the paper to their rock with a different kind of loadout, and you can still tear them up.
So that's how you're working out balancing with characters and other like different loadouts.
Yeah.
Because when you mentioned the flat leveling curve, it seems kind of interesting, because I was actually about to ask you how would balancing work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Flat level curve.
But it's very much like how all the upgrades are not quite side grades. They're a little bit of an advantage, but like the same thing kind of things in Team Fortress 2. Like Team Fortress 2, if you're the soldier and you have one rocket launcher versus the other, there's a slight tactical advantage there. But one does a little more damage, one does a little more splash damage. It's kind of a side grade, but there are players that will swear by, nope, I play only with this loadout versus this loadout, and it allows us to let everyone play together regardless of skill level, but skill and strategy as a team and skill and strategy as a player really do come into play. So it's a very different experience that we're applying to this game than that you typically would get out of a PvP game that plays in this perspective. So.
Yeah. Well, Eternal Fate sounds like a really interesting game. So you heard it, folks. Check out Eternal Fate on Kickstarter, and we'll see you later at the con.
There it is. Thank you. Thanks. Awesome, guys. Okay.